Ashley Mailloux and Mike Beer here with the Daily Racing Form. Going to take a look at a stakes race this Sunday at Woodbine. It's their 8th race on the program, the $100,000 steady gross for those Ontario bred horses, a mile and a 16th on the Tapeta. And a big field here. This is something that we see a lot of up at Woodbine, Mike. And in terms of the morning line, Arty Storm going to take the respect. And I just feel a lot has to do with his race 2 back in the Durham Cup.
Yeah, ran really well 2 starts back. Actually, didn't run as poorly as it may look at his most recent start in a grade 2. Sort of a deceptively good effort there, I thought anyway. And he's in a great spot here. He's your morning line favorite. It feels like this is the right kind of race for him to be really, really tough if he shows up with his good race in there. I think he's a deserving favorite.
Field of 11. Did you feel like when you looked at this, I mean, there's some horses that they come off of good races, but they've been on the turf, that the synthetic may not be what they prefer?
Yeah, that's a very valid case to be made, I think, for several of these horses. It also feels like, just sort of stepping up into races like this, especially against a horse like Arty Storm, it could just be a little bit too tough for some of these horses. But as you've already sort of alluded to in the open, another big field here for a stakes race. They just have a great stakes program up at Woodbine. All of these races are super interesting.
And they provide a lot of opportunities, and it's from the beginning to the end of the meet. We do know they don't race year round, but they do have a very, very long meet, which wraps up in just about a week. Now we'll look at the time form US pace projections here, and you can see Town Cruise and Mason's Gamble look to be forwardly placed. I pretty much agree with that. I don't know if you saw anyone else, Mike, that might maybe be pressing the pace early.
No, I really didn't. I mean, I guess we'll see what they do with the 6 Dundrum, who did show speed last time on the grass. But I did feel like Town Cruise, listen, it seems like he's not as fast as he used to be, especially a couple years ago, but he still has that speed when he wants to use it, and they should be using it here.
We'll kick it off with the number 1 Secret Reserve out of the Michael Mattini barn. This is one that's going to stretch out in distance, has really stuck to those one-turn distances, Mike, and hasn't found the winner's circle in quite some time.
It's very consistent, but I think that's the point that you're alluding to there about the distance could be the real sort of fly in the ointment for this horse. It feels like they've kept him going shorter for a reason. And these longer distances, I don't really feel like they do this horse any favors. He did draw well for this race, but even that most recent start going 7, he had a clear shot to win that race in the stretch, and it just felt like he didn't find enough late. Now he's got to go even further.
Yeah, and if you want to give him some credit in those grade 3 events earlier this year, he did face Patches O'Houlihan, who's been a little bit of a monster up at Woodbine. Now, the number 2, Mason's Gamble, this one's trained by Josie Carroll, has been kind of knocking at getting another victory in those last 2, Mike, but just hasn't been able to do so. The last win came, though, on the turf course 3 back.
Yeah, we'll see. He's one of the horses, so I guess you could, sort of make the argument that at least his recent races have been really good on a different surface. I think he's just as good on the all-weather, though. And I actually thought he ran pretty well last time after in a race that was just wired by a horse who got to the lead and ran a triple-digit buyer. I thought this horse did well to be second in there. I thought he was unlucky when he lost as the favorite 2 back on the turf. I don't mind him switching surfaces here. He's another horse, so I guess it could be a little bit questionable about how far he wants to go.
Yeah, I mentioned his last couple of minutes, 7.5. We haven't seen him go a mile and a 16th yet in his career. Now, we'll kick it off here with a replay for the number 3, Perfect Crime. This one for Colebrook Farms out of the Patrick Dixon barn. I thought this was a really good performance, was able to score an upset of odds of 9-1 last time out in the overskate. Yes, it was on the turf course, but in terms of trip, thought he got a perfect trip in this race from Kazushi Kimura and ends up getting the job done by almost 2.
Agreed. My main takeaway from this race is, and this horse did run well in here at 12-1 on the morning line for this race. I won't argue too hard, but he got a perfect trip in that race. And I didn't sort of feel the same way about Mason's Gamble, who was second as the favorite in there. I didn't think he pulled quite as good a trip in that race, and I would kind of prefer to have him this time. But this horse ran well last time.
The 4, Grandson, next in the field, 0 for 3 in 2023. Last time, though, arguably his best performance, and it's going to be at these same conditions.
I mean, came from the clouds to get a piece of that most recent start here. We'll see if this race sets up well for him. I suspect it's not going to, but we'll see how it all plays out. He's going to have to run, in my opinion, he's going to have to run the race of his life to win here.
Now, the 5, Town Cruise, you had talked about, Mike, maybe not as quick as he once was, but still has been forward in his last several outings. He was 3rd in that same race that Perfect Crime and Mason's Gamble exit.
Yeah, it just wasn't a real match, though, in the stretch of that race. I didn't think he ran poorly, but he did make the lead up the backstretch. It didn't feel like he was going too fast on the early lead. And when he was challenged to the stretch, he tried hard. He just couldn't hold on there. To me, this horse has lost maybe 2 steps, certainly at least 1 step as an 8-year-old. He's not as good as he used to be. If he can somehow get loose on the lead here and maybe have a flashback, maybe he could pull off an upset here.
They have given him a little bit of time, right? He's had about those 6 weeks or so off. He's got some nice drills over the Tapeta up at Woodbine if you want to maybe make a case for him, but I can also poke holes in his kind of recent form as well. Now the 6, Dundrum, this one out of the Ian Blackburn was 4th in that race. We keep on talking about the overskate. I wonder, though, if him being forward, if that kind of cost him a little bit, knowing that the winning trip was just off of it.
Yeah, it seems like they tried a little bit of a change of tactics last time. It didn't work out. He's another horse who I guess to me, it kind of feels like maybe that's the best that he can do. And he finished behind 3 of these same horses. So I thought he was hard to take in this race. Maybe switching back over to the all weather really helps him.
The ever so consistent 7, Arty Storm, does look tough in here for the Paul Buttigieg barn. Was 4th last time out. Wolfie's Dyna Ghost was able to win that, but 2 back, he was much the best, was able to beat Algiers and Wolfie's Dyna Ghost. And we'll show that replay of the Durham Cup. I mean, Mike, if you want to make a case for a horse, at least we know he loves the synthetic. He loves this distance. This is what he's kind of built for.
Yeah, and he just might be the best horse in here, and maybe by quite a bit. So I think there's a lot pointing to Arty Storm in this race. He runs really well, and here he did get a good trip. But this is a good field, and he's closing down a couple of really nice horses at the end. His start to last time in the autumn, he got a terrible trip in that race with no pace in front of him. He could not get over. He's wide all the way around the track. I think he ran way better than it looks on paper.
And I like that Emma Jane's going to climb back aboard, was aboard for that race, 2 back. Next in the field for Catherine Day Phillips is Rapid Test. We'll take a look at another replay here for the $100,000 Lake Ontario. This horse has a ton of work to do. It's, first start off a bit of a freshening, stretching out, but he just seems like he's a grinder, Mike. He's going to start to pick up some ground here in the final stages.
Yeah, he makes up late ground in this race. I'm conflicted about what to do with him here. He is off a layoff, so I think I want to point that out, first of all. Maybe he just wasn't that sharp early in this race, because when you go back and watch the full replay, I mean, this rider was all over him just to try to get him to keep up the backstretch in a full drive around the final turn, and he just could not make up any ground. And he finally started running at the end. So maybe he just needed that start. I'm still not sold that he wants to go this far either, but he's very lightly raced, and it seems like he has some talent.
Next is Ava Man. This one of the Donnie McRae barn, a new addition to the barn, was claimed for $32,000 and now finds himself against stakes competition, blinkers on. I just don't know what you do with this year so far. Pretty disappointing.
Yeah, he hasn't had a good season. He's off the claim here. They're going to move him back up. He did win this race last year, which, I guess could be a good sign for him. But, man, he had all the best of it there. They walked on the early lead, and I just thought he took advantage to pull off the upset. I couldn't bet him off of anything he's done so far this year.
There's an interesting stat, though, for Donnie McRae. 45% off the claim. It is a limited sample. It's 11, but you don't necessarily see numbers like that. Now, he is going to send out another horse in this field directly to Ava Man's outside. That's the number 10, Cruden Bay. We'll take a look at his race. Another horse that's just had, if you kind of look at Arty Storm and Cruden Bay, talk about consistent runners. He's yet to finish worse than second in 2023, and he's going to have to work for it in the final stages here. But I think looking at who he faced, this is a pretty respectable effort.
It is a good performance. He's another one. I thought he got overall a really good trip in this race, but he gets the job done. It's another step in the right direction for him. I can't knock any of his recent races, whether it's all weather or turf, and no matter what the distance is, he shows up and he runs really well every time. Listen, I thought the 9-2 morning line was maybe a little short for this horse because he is up in class here. I mean, he's got something to prove as a stakes horse.
Absolutely. And I think the one thing to note, though, is Kazushi's going to stay with him. We've talked about Kazushi riding a couple of other horses and shown some replays. He's going to stick with Cruden and Bay here. And we have one more horse, though, to round out the field. It's Ron's Gizmo, who 5 of his 6 career wins have been on the turf. But I think he's a little versatile, Mike, maybe sneaky at a price in here.
Yeah, I agree with you. It'll be interesting to see if he can run another good race on the all-weather here. If nothing else, this horse has gotten really good since he was claimed by these connections at the end of last year. He's had a good season this year. They switched, not only were they switching surfaces last time, by the way, but dropping back from 1 3/4 to 1.16 miles. And we just watched the stretch run of that race with Cruden Bay winning. Mm-hmm. This horse had an impossible trip in that race. And I actually feel like he ran really well. I'm shocked he got beat less than 3 lengths in that spot. I think he ran way better than it looks.
And he was 11-1. I believe he's 20-1 on the morning line. So that's a field of 11 for the $100,000 steady growth. And not going to be shocked here, Mike, based on what we said. I went with Arty Storm. You did too. Just really hard to knock, especially on that effort 2 back.
Agree. I mean, I just think he's too good for these horses. This is a great spot for him. I'm going to try to get the 11 Ron's Gizmo to the exacta.
All right, a nice price underneath for Mike. 7-11 to 10, 7 to 10, 8 for me. It's the steady growth. It's race number 8 this Sunday at Woodbine.